Getting up early. My name is John Green. I'm a novelist and a YouTuber, and I'm really excited to welcome you to VidCon 2015's industry track. A little bit of history about VidCon, just so you have a little bit of context. This conference was founded by my brother Hank 6 years ago, and it has been run entirely by him and his amazing team ever since. But I was on a conference call in 2009, and as a result of that, I am technically the co-founder of VidCon. So I really hope you have a great weekend, and if you do, you're welcome. And if you don't, I would just like to remind you that that is Hank's fault. So I was a novelist before I ever made videos. My first novel, Looking for Alaska, came out almost exactly 1 month before the first video was ever uploaded to YouTube back in 2005. And the intervening 10 years have obviously been amazing for online video. There are more people at this conference than the most successful YouTube channels had in subscribers in 2007. But it's also been a really good 10 years for me and for my career. My book that came out in 2012, The Fault in Our Stars, has spent 187 consecutive weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and was adapted into a film. And the movie adaptation of my book, Paper Towns, happens to come out tomorrow. So you should see that. Also, if I seem tired, that is why. I have not slept in my bed in months. But none of that would have been possible without YouTube. My brother and I have been making videos back and forth to each other since 2007, and the community that's built up around those videos has made everything else in my life and career possible. And one thing that I've learned over the last 8 years of making online video content is that I suck at predicting the future. In fact, I think everyone sucks at predicting the future, but I happen to be exceptionally bad at it. I could never have imagined that our educational channel Crash Course would be integrated into tens of thousands of schools around the world. I didn't really see it as a school thing when we started out because I couldn't see the future correctly. I could never have imagined that my friends in online video would be turning down TV opportunities because, as someone just said backstage to me, why would I take a pay cut in exchange for the privilege of not owning my intellectual property? And I could never imagine that the phrase online video would become redundant, because all video would become online video. So I don't know anything about the future, and I find the present plenty baffling. So all I'm going to try to do today is introduce a little bit of what I think about the present, some of the challenges and opportunities that face us right now in our world, in the industry. So I think that there's amazing video being made off of television and all kinds of things, right? I mean, there's video about global poverty and videos about base jumping and about how coffee gets decaffeinated and why Mark Rothko is a good painter, and makeup and fashion and video games. We're even starting to figure out narrative content, how to adapt the conventions of televised or filmed scripted video to the online space. But most of the people who are engaged in this world and who use it regularly are young, and I am sure that you are all familiar with the narrative about young people, which goes back, I don't know how far, but at least 3,500 years to the ancient Greeks, which is that young people are distracted and self-involved and disengaged. And this generation is the worst generation of all time, and the best generation of all time is their parents. The bar for the greatest generation, I don't know if you ever read that book by Tom Brokaw, The Greatest Generation. It's fascinating though how the bar for the greatest generation changes as each generation dies. But anyway, People always say that, like, makeup, for instance, and makeup tutorials are superficial and silly, and then they say, like, who would ever watch someone else play a video game? What could be more boring and stupid and a worse use of your time? This whole idea underlies it, that young people are solipsistic and deeply disinterested in the world outside of themselves. In fact, we know better, I think. We know that those same young people are building amazing communities through makeup tutorials. They're learning about self-acceptance and self-care. Like, when you watch an Ingrid Nilsson video or a Louise Pentland video, you know immediately that this is about makeup, but it's also about something more. And let me submit that when you watch The Blacklist and you congratulate yourself on your intellectual sophistication, you are in fact watching something that isn't about something more. The same thing is true with the communities built through gaming. I mean, PewDiePie's viewers aren't just watching him play video games, they've also worked with him to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for Save the Children. And so while this generation has been watching, like, CSI Miami and being so thrilled with ourselves for being so incredibly smart and interesting, young people are building this vast and complex world of deep engagement online and off, and it's places where they aren't just passive viewers or listeners or readers, but they're active community members. They're creating comments and fan fiction and artwork. They're pushing culture toward listening to traditionally marginalized voices, toward a more just and open social order. And that's what I think of as engagement. When I talk about engagement, that's what I mean. So, one of the reasons I watch YouTube, in fact, like, one of the reasons I do anything ever, is that I want to be distracted. I want to be distracted from my abundant anxieties. I want to be distracted from my responsibilities, from my real life, and I like distractions. And I am in favor of distractions, and I'm not here to tell you that distractions are bad. But online video isn't only about distractions, it's also about this engagement, and I believe that's kind of the rub when it comes to our business, because it's traditionally been funded by advertising, and advertising is incredibly efficient at funding distractions, right? Because what advertisers traditionally have wanted is eyeballs. They want eyeballs to see their message. And if the eyeball is a little bit, like, lean back and distracted and disinterested, that's actually good for the advertiser, right? Because then you won't fast forward through the ad, or then you won't, like, lean forward and be like, I'm not sure that Tide is the best detergent of all time. It's also really good for advertisers because how many eyeballs a distraction attracts is almost a perfect measure of how good it is at being a distraction. But advertising is really bad at valuing engagement, which is why I think ad rates online have never reflected the real value that's being created in online video. So again, I think that distraction is a good and noble business, but I think that deep down, most of us in this room, whether we're creators or investors or agents or marketers, we don't really want to be just in the distraction business, especially now that we have seen the value and awesomeness of being in the engagement business. It's good to distract people from their problems. It's better to help them wrestle with those problems meaningfully, whether it's the problem of finding meaning in life or the problem of being unsure how to tie a bow tie. So the kinds of video that mean the most to us online, the ones that help us to lead fuller and better and more connected lives, those are dramatically undervalued by advertising. And there's a lot of ways to address this. Hank and I have been trying to address it by having most of our educational content, Crash Course and SciShow, funded directly by voluntary payments made through Patreon, and we've had incredible success with that, and we've been able to grow both Crash Course and SciShow a lot just based on viewer support. We also, through our merch company, DFTV Records, we've always made more money from shirts and posters than we've ever made from ads. I think advertising provides around like 18% now of the revenue of our company, but it drops every year. And I think that's true for many creators. I mean, I think that we're all finding ways to live without advertisers if we're in the engagement business because we've been forced to. You know, they're doing live events, they're publishing books, they're crowdfunding, they're producing albums, they sell t-shirts, they get grants from nonprofits. In short, they're building a world where they don't need advertising. And to be frank with you, I believe that an internet that answers to its users is ultimately healthier than an internet that answers to brands. So, I also think it's better for brands, but I'll get to that. Because I noticed the brand people not clapping. So this year has seen the emergence of this huge conversation about how we're going to fund online video in the future, and that's incredibly exciting for me because we need to figure that out. You know, are we going to have paid subscriptions? Are we going to rely primarily on advertising? Are we going to have voluntary payment systems like Patreon? Or are we going to have some hybrid model or something that I haven't thought of yet? So here are my thoughts. I actually believe in advertising, but I also believe that to remain relevant, advertising needs to change dramatically. The real opportunity for brands online, which I don't think marketers can find on TV or anywhere else, is to help creators build and foster better communities so that those communities can bring better and more interesting stuff into the world. If brands interacted with those communities authentically and they didn't impose their values or messaging on them, they would win over the passionate and engaged communities, not for a quarter or for a campaign, but for a lifetime. If a brand helps make the minute physics video that, okay, imagine, I don't know what I wrote. Imagine that I want to understand quantum mechanics. There's an amazing creator, Henry Reich, who makes videos about physics, and his videos about physics help me to understand quantum mechanics. I'm going to remember for the rest of my life the company that made those videos possible. And I will have an incredibly positive relationship with that company that you cannot buy, that you cannot do with impressions or advertising on Deadliest Catch. My relationship with that company will be fundamentally changed because they will have made it possible for me to have a better and more interesting relationship with the universe. But advertisers have to learn that in the world of engaged internet, the less obtrusive they are, the more successful their campaigns will be, even if that isn't easily quantifiable in the short run. I know you guys like to quantify things. I also believe in voluntary payments. I think if you're transparent with your viewers and they really care about your work, they will support it and they will help it grow. I've seen that in my own career. You only need like a 2 or 3% of your viewers to become patrons in order to support your work at 2 or 3 times the rate of advertising, at least in my experience. And I believe in the promise of subscriptions. Now, I have never seen a paywall grow anyone's audience, but I will gladly pay to watch my favorite creators ad-free. The risk of subscriptions is pretty simple to me, which is that I believe that the vast majority of independent online creators who are building these direct and meaningful relationships with broad audiences care more about audience than they do about money. And they care more about their audiences than they do about turning those audiences into money. So I think anytime that we consider subscriptions, you have to remember that fundamental fact of the internet today. So, in short, I don't know. I don't know what the future looks like, and I don't know how to fix the problem of monetization. But I just really hope that as we discuss it together this weekend, but also in the coming months and years, that we consider not just what will bring in the most immediate revenue, but also what kind of online video world we want to live in. How can we foster community and grow the internet of engagement? What business models will best allow the free flow of ideas and content between viewers and creators? What's going to help us build a broader creator base that includes more diverse voices? And I know those don't sound like business questions, but I believe that ultimately they are, because while we all have to think month to month and quarter to quarter and year to year, my favorite thing about making original content online is that in the long run, what's good for your community is always good for your business. Thank you. So, thanks again for coming to VidCon. It is my distinct pleasure now to bring to the stage the editorial director of VidCon's industry track, the amazing Jim Louderback, who's going to see you through the rest of the day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.